Welcome back to Test Don't Guess Tuesday. I'm Melissa Hawklopacki, your gut health specialist, talking about the GI map test, talking about some past clients, what worked for them, how we heal the gut, what kind of information we get from this amazing test, and how we act on it so that we can actually start healing ourselves, right? So this client who came to me was diagnosed with H. pylori a few months ago, and it was from her gastroenterologist. She was put on antibiotics for 10 days and started to feel a little bit better. But then when she went, I'm reading from my chart, then when she went off the antibiotics, felt worse. Neck pain, nausea, abdomen pain, and burning in her stomach. She took the digestive discovery test and then made an appointment with me to go over her answers. And that's what we did. And we created a plan to help her heal. Let's see, what other symptoms did she have? So she had the neck pain. A lot of times neck pain, right, can be referred from gallbladder. And so that was one of the things that I was thinking about as, you know, we talk about digestion, and it's not just the mouth and chewing and the esophagus and into the stomach. And it includes, right, the liver and the gallbladder and the bile, and then all of the intestines, and then the colon. There's a lot of steps to it. And so that's what we did on the phone call. We did a long phone call. We broke it down. When did her symptoms start? What makes things better? What makes things worse? What has she tried in the past? Those are all kinds of things that we need to suss out so that we can move forward in the best way possible with what makes sense for each particular client, because it's very different for each person. So for her, I'm going to take you next through her test, tell you a little bit about what we did. You'll get to see. So she, like we said, had gone on antibiotics for 10 days and then wound up with more problems, right? A lot of times when you're trying to treat a gut problem with antibiotics that are going to kill all of the good stuff in your gut as well as the bad stuff, we wind up a little bit sicker. So what do we do? How do we fix it? Let's talk about that next. Okay, so let's dig into the results of the GI map and see what we find. And here on the first page is a list of pathogens that we normally find when people have gastroenteritis. And that is exactly what we found here with the E. coli, and relatively high. If you'll see, 1 to the E3 is the reference range, and she's at over 3 E to the 4. That's a significantly high level of E. coli that will produce symptoms in patients, and that's what we're seeing here with her. The rest of the page was clear, no parasitic activity found, and no viral pathogens. Here on the second page, you can see that she does have some opportunistic overgrowth. Bacillus was high, Pseudomonas was high, and Staph was high. All fairly innocuous, right? Nothing. Let's look at those numbers. Strep was significantly high, especially the bottom number, but nothing that a broad spectrum antimicrobial herbal blend couldn't handle. You'll see that nothing else on the rest of this page has lit up red, though it doesn't mean that there aren't problems here. So if you look at the commensal and overgrowth microbes, these two talk a little bit about what's happening in the small intestine. A lot of times people with small intestine bacterial overgrowth will see this bottom number of the methanobacteria really high, and it's creeping higher for her, which could explain some of the gas. If you look at autoimmune and inflammatory related bacteria, Klebsiella also creeping higher. Not something that we like to see get high, because autoimmune disorders can result. Remember, they start in your gut. So we need to keep these numbers lower. Fortunately, the same antimicrobials that are going to knock down the dysbiotic bacteria in that top section are also going to help to take down the numbers of the Klebsiella. You'll notice here too, the commensal, inflammatory, and autoimmune related bacteria, again, while nothing is red and off the charts, all of those are also creeping higher, and I don't like to see those. So this is where we start to talk about LPS or lipopolysaccharides that do some damage in the gut. So again, I would be thinking always when I see my red numbers, okay, what can I give this client that will take some of these red numbers down, but also be able to knock down some of these other players. So that is exactly the thinking here. You'll see no parasites were detected, though I remind you, parasites are rarely detected on this test. And when I do parasite cleansing with my clients that are in need of it, we always find parasites, even though this test doesn't show it. It's just very, very hard to test for. Intestinal health markers, my favorite part of this test. We talk about how her digestion's doing, and you see it couldn't be much better, right? Both in the very top of the green, both her steatocrit and her elastase. So her pancreatic enzymes, the way that she's digesting fat, all doing really well. The GI markers of beta-glucuronidase being high is telling me that she's not doing a great job with her hormones and her estrogen and how that's recirculating with the liver. So that would be a concern for us, something to focus in on. And also a little bit of blood in the stool. 0, 1, 2 isn't abnormal. Here it was a 0, which is fantastic. The next section talks about immune response. Her secretory IgA is right here in the middle, a healthy immune response, which is great. Not reacting much to gluten. I do tell most of my clients to avoid gluten when we're working on gut health, mostly because of the glyphosate, not necessarily the gluten, that does some damage to the gut. Here she seems to be handling it well. And her eosinophil activation protein here is high, and that's telling us that something she's doing is triggering her immune response. And in this case, I did recommend some food sensitivity testing to figure out what's driving that, as well as, if you see below, the inflammation level, the calprotectin is in the high range too. Again, what's aggravating the gut? What's driving inflammation? If we can figure that out and remove the offender while we repair the gut lining, that's where the magic happens. Here, H pylori. So while she was on antibiotics for H pylori, we don't have a baseline test because it was discovered by a medical doctor not running this test. But here, 6.83 e to the 2 is still slightly high. So I wouldn't say it's all gone. There are some natural substances that we can use to help her bring that level down even further without compromising her gut integrity by using antibiotics, right? When we use antibiotics, we generally tend to see overgrowth, which is what we saw here. Here at the top, right, this overgrowth could be very well from antibiotics. And then the other thing that it does is it knocks down some of these key players, this commensal bacteria that we need. Bacteroidetes fragilis is low, Akkermansia and Faecalibacterium prausnitzii not even detectable. So that would be our first thought, is how to replace those, as well as a good general probiotic. Now remember, probiotics really have to make it through the stomach and all of that acid to get into the intestines. So a small fraction is probably getting in there, which is why we like to use foods like kimchi, yogurt, if you can tolerate dairy, or sauerkraut that's putting good probiotics back into the system. Here you'll see her Bacteroidetes level is low, her Firmicutes level is high. She's still doing okay with her Bacteroidetes to Firmicutes ratio. And that's talking just about the bacteria. And this would have been really helpful, right, when she was being treated for H pylori. One of the beauties of this test is that it will tell you your H pylori, your specific bacteria, whether it's resistant or not to antibiotics. So here, she did take amoxicillin, thank goodness, because she did not have any problems with that. But if she had taken any of these medications or clarithromycin, she would not have had any reaction, because those medications, the genes would have been resistant to those medications. So amoxicillin and tetracycline are good choices for her. I would have used neither. I would have attacked it with some good nutraceuticals and herbal antibiotics so that we weren't doing more damage to the gut, which is the problem. When we're treating the gut and we treat it with antibiotics, we're compounding problems. So that is the GI map test. Those are her results. And we did do a nice round of a general antibacterial herbal product along with some high-dose probiotics, food sensitivity testing, change in her diet, right, which brought her inflammation levels down and rebalanced her gut. So if that's something that makes sense for you, I would highly recommend you take this test, because look how much information you get, pages and pages and pages that gives us an idea of what we need to do and next steps. It's the data that you need so that you can start healing. You can find this test at digestivediscovery.com. There's a back-end portal with information from me, from the lab, on how to read your tests, on what you should be thinking about next, on how to make lifestyle changes. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for learning about your gut. And if you have any questions about any of this information, remember, it's not medical information. I am sharing results of a test and talking to you about what worked for this client. But we all are different, so you should check in with your medical provider and see if this test is right for you. I'll see you soon.